Good morning and welcome to The Car Guy. I'm your host, Klaus. Today we're going to be talking about what you might want to look for when you're looking at a previously enjoyed car. Most of the time when we find cars, we'll find them on Craigslist or Auto Trader or Cars.com, and if we're looking at private party cars, the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that when you look at these ads, if the cars are dirty, if they've not been cleaned up, if there's stuff in the interior, they've not been vacuumed, I'd probably move on to the next car. But when you come across something like this happens to be a 2002 BMW M3. These are pretty cool cars, but there are things that you should look for regardless of what car you might be looking at. And generally, we're going to start with the outward appearance of the car. Take a good look at the paint. Make sure the paint's shiny. Make sure there's no big damage on the car. Make sure there's not a lot of dings and dents that will cost you a lot of money to fix. And then be really careful about the paint itself. Some of the ways you can tell if a car has been painted, as an example, if we look at the front hood of this car and we run our hands along the outside edge of this hood, and if it's rough, chances are it's most likely been painted. The only time it'll be absolutely smooth is when it comes from the factory like that. We want to look at gaps, the hood gap, the door gaps. You want to make sure that they're consistent on both sides of the automobile. That's also an indicator that the car may have been involved in an accident. We want to open the doors. We want to check the edges of the door again, like the hood, to make sure that they're smooth and they've not been painted. Same thing with the door jambs. Sometimes if the car has been painted, there may be an indicator of perhaps some masking that you want to look at. And you want to look pretty carefully. Body shops that do good work are going to cover this pretty well. Take a look at the tires. Make sure the tires are in good, usable condition. And folks, when it comes to tires, don't get cheap on the tires. Buy the best tire that you can possibly buy for the money that you have. Buy the best thing that you have that's affordable to you. And the reason I say that is my hand is about what the car is actually contacting the pavement with. You have about that much contact with the pavement, which means this piece of rubber is the only thing that's keeping you in contact with Mother Earth. Make sure you buy good quality tires. You also want to look at tire wear. Are the tires worn on both the inside and the outside? Are they worn specifically just to the middle of the tire, which would indicate most likely tire pressure problems? Or are you getting wear on just the outside or just the inside of the tire, which could indicate alignment issues? Have a good look at the windshield. Make sure there's no chips, if at all avoidable, most certainly any cracking. We have to understand that today's automobiles, the windshield is actually bonded to the car and it becomes a structural member of the car. So if there's a small crack, it will get bigger. Open up the hood. Check your fluid levels. Check coolant. Check the oil level. Check the brake fluid level. Also, take a look at the fluids. Are they clean? Is the oil clean or is it really dirty? Is it low? Take a look at brake fluid. Is it nice and clean or is the fluid level low? Take a look at the brakes as well. You may not necessarily be able to see the brake rotors or the brake pads on every wheel. Some wheels will limit what you can see, but you should be able to see a nice smooth brake disc or brake rotor. It should be nice and smooth. It shouldn't have a bunch of grooves in it, and it shouldn't have a lip on the outside of the brake rotor. The lip would indicate an enormous amount of wear, and on today's automobiles, a lot of these brake rotors cannot be machined. They have to simply be replaced when they reach the wear limit, and they can get expensive. Check for fluid leaks, check for oil leaks. You do want to remove the oil cap and check under the cap, making sure that there's nothing in here that would resemble a milkshake, something very, very tan or light brown in color. That could indicate that you'd have coolant in the oil, and that could be a real serious issue and very expensive. As you're making your way around the car, look for any imperfections in the car, dents and dings. Don't necessarily point them out to the seller. I mean, this could be his baby or her baby, but if you see something, there's a small ding here, take a look at it. I wouldn't mention it, but take a look at it. They know. And all you're trying to basically do is just let the seller know that you are seeing what's wrong with the car without necessarily pointing it all out. If you're selling cars, or if you're a sales manager or a used car manager, and you're appraising somebody's car with a customer there, I would implore you to do the same thing. It's their car. They might love this automobile. Don't have to pick it apart. Just let them know that you see what might be wrong with the automobile. Make sure you check all the lights, make sure you check all the lenses, turn the car on, check brake lights, check turn signals, check headlights. Headlights on today's automobiles can be terribly, terribly expensive. Make sure they all work. Again, when you go to test drive the car, make sure everything works. If it's got power seats, make sure the seats work. Again, that can be a terribly expensive repair. Make sure that the headlights work, like we said before. When you start the car, make sure there's no warning lights on the automobile. There could be a check engine light, there could be a SRS light, there could be any number of lights that could come on that indicate a fault that could, again, be expensive to repair. Try to have the owner not start the car before you get there. You want to try to start it cold if at all possible, so that if there's any engine noise or if there's any exhaust smoke coming out from the car, whether it be white or blue or even a blackish, indicating the car might be running rich. This is something we want to find out really before we go for a road test. And again, we want to try to make sure that the engine is cold when we get there. It's an indicator. Take a good look at the interior. If it's leather or if it's cloth, it doesn't really matter. Make sure there's no rips or tears. Again, those are expensive items to repair. You want to make sure the dash doesn't have any cracks. Make sure the steering wheel is also intact and that the carpeting is nice. Wear like this is pretty simple to repair. This is just a matter of dying. But tears and rips can get really expensive, particularly when it comes to leather. Again, it would be best if we can get to the car and have it not run, have a cold engine when we arrive. When you go to start the car, you want to make sure the car starts quickly. If you have somebody with you, it'd be a good idea to take a look out the exhaust, make sure there's nothing discolored coming out of the exhaust pipe, either white or blue smoke, or a good indicator of engine wear. You want to make sure it idles well. You want to make sure it idles smoothly. You also want to make sure that we don't have any warning lamps on. In this particular case, we happen to have a SRS or airbag light on the automobile. Keep in mind, these warning lights only indicate that there may be a fault with that particular part of the system, not that there is a fault. The computer has picked up or detected a possible fault and instantly the light comes on. It doesn't mean there's a failure, it simply indicates that the system may have found fault. Check everything in the car, make sure it works. If it has power windows, make sure the power windows do work. They can be terribly expensive to repair if they don't. Check all four. If it has 4 power windows, check all 4. Also the sunroof. If the car is equipped with a sunroof, make sure the sunroof works. If it's equipped with heated seats, as an example, make sure the heated seats work. Does the stereo work? Make sure everything functions. Again, these can be terribly expensive things to fix. Remember, when you go to drive somebody's car, it was their baby. Be nice to it. You can drive it however you want after you've given them a check. So let's go for a road test. This should be fun. You should also scare the absolute you-know-what out of my cameraman. Here we go. Find a nice place where you can drive the car, where there's very little traffic. You want to be able to feel the steering, make sure there's no play in the steering or no excessive play in the steering. You're going to want to get on the brakes and make sure that there's no brake pulsation. And you're going to want to accelerate, but don't accelerate real hard. Again, be nice to the car until it actually becomes yours. It might be a really good idea to make a list of all the things that I've talked about and make sure that you check all of them. Don't miss anything on the list. It could be something that could cost you an awful lot of money once you've already acquired the automobile. Again, just make sure everything works. Make sure it's solid. When you get back to where you started, take a look at where the car was parked. Are there any fluid leaks underneath the car? Again, these can get really expensive. Again, take a look at your list. Did you cover everything? Did you look at everything? Did you not miss anything? It's important. You want to make sure you're buying the best car that you can for the money. Hopefully the show's been informative. Hopefully you'll be able to use some of this information the next time you look at an automobile. Thanks for joining us this morning. We want to thank our sponsors, Can-Am Auto Body, and also the good folks at European Auto House. This, by the way, is a good car.
The Car Guy is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksMedia.com, which is solely responsible for its content. The Car Guy is sponsored in part by European Auto House and Can-Am Body Shop. Ask Klaus a question, recommend a guest, or hear this program again on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SpokaneTalksMedia.com.